Hey everyone, we're in the Gigabyte factory right now in Taiwan, and what we're looking at is a couple of SMT line machines. So this is service mount technology. This is where motherboards are built and assembled by Gigabyte. Before we get into that, all of this coverage is brought to you by Roseville and their new case lineup that we saw at Computex just moments ago. So what we've got here, first of all, this is the first machine in the line that we've looked at. This one is applying some of the paste to the board, so it's preparing the board for the next part of the line. And as you can see in the B-roll, it's basically just laying it on thick, and then the board rolls through here. It's pulled through automatically by effectively robotic arms, conveyed down the line, and the next machines in the series apply all the different components. So the next machines will pick up and walk over there, and these ones are for the service mount components. So this machine is used for applying the different resistors and the BIOS chip, the actual physical black square, the firmware chipset, all of those individual parts, ICs, all that stuff is just planted down firmly right here onto the board after the previous line, which was applying the paste and compound and things like that. So this is the second part of the line. It gets the board moving through and eventually hits the third part, which we'll look at next. So the third machine in the line is effectively a giant oven. This one, you can see the motherboards rolling out behind me, and they're going straight that way into the next set of machines. The oven is reflowing for the solder. So you may have heard the term reflow for solder with regard to laptops or repairing GPUs that have been warmed to a point that the solder has effectively melted. This gets the solder prepared, set in place, reflowed, as they say, and the boards are coming through now. I can actually see on the board it's got the chipset on it, it's got the socket protector, all of the contact points are there for the mounting of things like the pinout for the 24-pin header. All that stuff is on there now, but we don't actually have the plastic on there yet, so that's coming up very soon. So the next machine in the line is this one. It looks like a machine gun. You can see the whole belt of capacitors feeding in, and they're being punched onto the motherboard by this moving head back here behind me. So pretty cool stuff. This actually just pounds all these capacitors into the board. It moves around, seeks on the board, and plants them where they belong based on the designs that are put into the computer here behind me. And then this moves further down the line where technicians and operators will manually place other board components. And you can see that in the B-roll, things like headers and pieces of plastic that are required for power and stuff like that. So that is further down the line. So at this point, up until this machine, all the components have been more or less added to the board, but they're not actually secured on the board just yet. And that's done with solder. So the parts roll up here at a slight incline, and on this ramp, there's just, you can see the solder sort of pouring off the bottom here. So that's applying all the components more firmly to the board, and it runs, just for an idea, at 267 Celsius, so pretty hot. The upward motion here is just applying basic gravity to keep the parts sort of down on the board. They're checked again down this way, and they were checked previously over here by technicians who make sure everything's secure. Once it is noted as secure, rolls through the machine, keeps going down the line. All right, so this pretty much brings us to the conclusion of the Gigabyte factory tour. For now, we'll be back with more depth in the future probably, but for this quick overview of how the factory works, this is pretty much the end. It's the packing line. So it's a whole line. It concludes technicians and machines. The machine behind me is actually coming down and punching a box. So these boxes are provided in just flat sheets, flat sheet of cardboard. It's got all the art already applied to it. That's already been done. And at this point, it rolls in, arm comes down and punches it, and it folds into the correct shape. And then that is rolled onto the line as a box that's open and prepared, at which point the technicians will begin adding the motherboards to the conveyor belt. They roll down the line as a unit. Next technician applies the foam, the anti-static foam. They'll put the board into the ESD bag or the Faraday cage, and that's all done by hand. It's not done by machines, so it is a pretty steady pace moving on the conveyor belt, and all done manually from here. At the very end of the line is a packing machine that basically the box is added into another box for shipping, and that rolls through a machine that applies packing tape straight down the top of the box, down the center, as we saw in our ages-old Kingston factory tour. So that more or less wraps up the Gigabyte factory. As always, more information on the channel and on the website, gamersnexus.net. Thank you for watching. Patreon link in the post-roll video if you want to help us out with our next efforts. I'll see you all next time.